Everyone, this is the Innovator's Mindset with Brett Vogelsinger. There we go. Well, I'm really excited to have this episode today. I connected with Brett, basically reading one of his articles as I was doing research for a presentation I was doing, and the article was inviting AI with curiosity. It's a really great article. You can actually see it in the link down below. And Brett actually, when we connected, he's like, I actually have a book coming out about this stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It is titled Artful AI in Writing Instruction, and you will be able to get it. There is a link down below that you'll be able to get it. So Brett in Central Bucks, I got to give a little Central Bucks shout out. It's been a while since I was there. So Jason Jaffe, make sure you say hi to him from me. So Brett, if you could just tell everyone who you are, what you do today, and how you got there, I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Brett Vogelsinger, a 22-year veteran teacher. Taught 8th grade for 10 years, 9th grade for 10 years, and now I teach 10th and through 12th grade at Central Bucks High School South. This is my second book. I've been a writer my whole life. From the time I was a kid, I loved writing, and I'm excited to bring some of this writing to the education space as well. So my first book was about poetry pauses and using poetry to teach writing. And now I'm venturing into this exciting and somewhat scary new world of using AI effectively to get kids writing and thinking better, not eroding their skills.
That is quite the transition. You know, like everyone goes from poetry to AI.
Right.
Like just logical transition. And one of the things that you had mentioned and you talked about, as you're introducing yourself, I think that really, really matters is that you are currently teaching, you're leveraging this stuff. I think that, kind of having conversations, you're not like, hey, we don't even need to write anymore, right? Let's just get AI to do it. But you are leveraging it, but you're being very thoughtful about it. Tell us some about like some of that process that you're using in your own class, like some of the practical stuff, like maybe an example of how you're like leveraging AI through enhancing kids' writing.
Sure. So from the time that we first encountered, ChatGPT was sort of a lot of people's first like wow moment, right? With AI. I started with a curious mindset, as you see in the article. And from there, I wanted to make sure that I was modeling my own thinking as it developed with my students about this technology and also listening to my students because very quickly they were dabbling in it themselves.
Right.
And of course, any teacher has found examples of using it for dishonest purposes and in ways that are clearly not with academic integrity. But what I've tried to do is do a lot of thinking aloud in front of students and using models of how this could work. So for instance, I do an activity called Is It Cheating? And I'll take an old prompt that I'm not using in class anymore and say, okay, let's ask AI to do this with it in our brainstorming process. I'm going to give it a list of ideas I came up with and then ask it, what am I missing? Is that cheating? Okay, now I'm going to ask it to write the whole essay according to this prompt. Is that cheating? Well, what am I going to do next with that draft is a big part of the question. Am I turning it into my own, or am I going to tease a sentence from it that makes me think more deeply? I think that's one of the ways that I started early on. More recently, I've been doing things like using it as a diving board and saying, hey, in my AP literature class, let me have AI create an essay about the topic we're working on, like epic traditions. And then what did we talk about in class that goes beyond this? How is this bad writing? In other words, it's accurate, it's clear and it's organized, but it's not interesting and it doesn't go deep. So you make it interesting, you take it deep, decide what needs to go away, what you need to put in, give it human voice, and show me what we learned that is not reflected in these basics that it generates in its first draft. In another class, I use things like cheating with AI would look like asking it to outline all the themes in a book that you were supposed to have read and then writing about those, right? And saying sort of bluffing your way. But I said, okay, you've been in a book club. You've been talking about these books. I know you've been reading it. I've been sitting in on your conversations in this book club. Now that we're almost done with the book club, ask AI, what are the major themes in this book? And find one that didn't come up in your conversation. Where's that little thread you didn't actually tease out of this book that you were reading together? And now pause, talk about it, and write in your paper writer's notebook about that idea that you almost missed in your consideration of this novel together. So I think ideas like this that are pushing kids thinking. I mean, more recently, just last week, I had students do a character analysis of a character in Of Mice and Men. And I said, instead of asking AI to analyze the character, which will hijack your thinking,
Right.
let's ask it to ask us questions. We have an idea of a character and a big idea we're trying to link that to. So let's say, ask me 5 questions about George and the burden of responsibility, and what, that I should be able to answer from Of Mice and Men. And those questions can provoke thinking that we can develop in our writing.
Yeah, when we were talking before, and like the concept of like cheating with AI, I remember
Mhm.
listening to AJ Giuliani, who's a very good friend of mine, talking about this. And there is that conversation about like kids cheating, having to write their essays, etc. And the thing that I thought was really fascinating was he asked, like, would you have used it when you were a kid? And
Mm.
like every teacher's like, totally. Like I would have. And my add-on to that was I cheated as much as I could. Like if when you did math questions and they said, "Hey, don't look at the back of the book because you need to know
Mhm.
it," and I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I think part of it, is that kids really have to see why is it even important to write for yourself in the first place, right? And I think that in a time because like for me, the reason I went to the back of the book was because I'm just seeing math as a checklist subject that I got to get through so I can graduate. And so how do you emphasize that importance of writing and why it matters and why you shouldn't just use AI to write everything for you and like what do you lose from that? Like how do you work with that with students? Because that I think that it matters more than ever that students really understand why they're doing something than ever because well why would I do that if I can just have this thing do it for me, right? So
That's
like, how do
so,
you
so
emphasize that?
critical. Yeah. A couple of things have helped. Making sure that I think all of us need to reconsider all of our writing assignments to see whether they make sense, not just in the age of AI, but for the 21st century. Sometimes we carry on writing assignments just because it's what we've always done. I think that there's an example. I worked with the New York Times Learning Network contest this year and had students write an open letter about something they cared about. They had to choose an audience for that open letter and then decide why it would be open and to be read by a broader audience. There was no one looking to use AI in that assignment. Like,
Right.
they were dialed in because it was one student, for instance, was talking about a health concern that they personally experience in life and what they wanted their peers to know about it. So it was like to teenagers in my class, what I want you to know about this health concern that I deal with, and dispelling certain myths about it and certain there was heart in that piece. He didn't need to research it because he knew it because it was his life.
Right.
And so I love giving assignments like that and making sure all classes have assignments that pull in, things that are personal to students that are in their heart. We have a writing center in our high school too, which is incredible in sponsoring writing contests, writing challenges throughout the year that always keep in front of kids writing that's not just traditional academic writing. However, when we have academic writing, how do I emphasize the value of that? I think one thing we haven't done well with traditionally is saying how can something like a literary analysis essay have value in the real world? I mean, we never write one after school, right? I mean, you don't go out
Let's
and
go to college.
analyze Mice and Men.
Right.
So, like, what value does that have? Are we talking to kids about how analysis skills show up in the workplace
Hmm.
and in career paths that they may choose? Because analysis skills are everywhere and in every career path. So I think that is something I pause and take time with in class and say, okay, what we're doing here, which is breaking down the parts of a text and looking at how they work to accomplish something. I mean, that's analogous to a mechanic figuring out the problem in your car and figuring out how these parts function together to make the
Hmm.
whole work again and make it right. So if we can articulate more of that to students, I think that will help. And the other thing was listening to listening, I want to emphasize again to students, some of what's in my book is interviews with students about their misuse of AI, their frustrations with AI. They don't all love it either, George. I think it's important to
Yeah.
remember that we don't have, it may feel like it sometimes, but the reality is not that every student is just flocking there to make it do their homework.
Right.
They are more complex in their feelings about it, just like adults are. But what I said about listening, some of my best conversations this year have started with students trying to cheat with AI
Hmm.
and me finding their work was lackluster in every way
Hmm.
and saying, I don't really like this. Do you like this? I don't like how something doesn't feel that
Right.
I don't hear you in it and I know you and I
Yeah.
care about you and I want to hear from you. What do you think is going on with this? And like maybe
I love that.
it's amazing how fast the confessions come in at that point. But I'm not doing it as an interrogation method. I'm doing it because what I'm interrogating is not the student, but their writing process, how they feel about writing. And that's what you're getting at here is like you've got to feel that writing has value and merit to want to go through the sometimes agonizing work of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I literally this past weekend I sent out an email newsletter every Saturday, and it's I call it three things. This is kind of like I'm going to give you three ideas about whatever topic I'm feeling that day, and I just was not feeling like writing. I was like having a down week, so I'm like I'm going to dictate to AI my ideas and my thoughts, and then I'm going to ask it to kind of make this. And I was fully transparent at the beginning of the newsletter. I'm saying, hey, I'm trying something here, and
Mhm.
this is like a collaboration with me and ChatGPT, and I'll talk to you about it later. And exactly what you had said, when I went through that process, I know this sounds weird. It was so much more succinct than I was. And it was just right straight to the point, but it would take out like little anecdotes or little stories or little, like I refer to them as Georgisms. So it's
Mhm.
like it's like it took away my personality. And so as I talked about the process, one of the things I really struggle with, and I said like, hey, if you're trying to get information out, this could be a really beneficial thing as like a school principal, you're trying to get a newsletter out. But what I did to kind of contribute to that was I went through the process and I added little parts so you could still hear my voice, because I understand we want to get through some quick, people just want the information. But if you take away your personality, and we believe relationships are so crucial to what we do in education, and we're just being informational, we lose so much through that process. So that was like me kind of doing that kind of going through the process. And what I really appreciate about what you're sharing is that you're still learning this, you're still modeling this as well. And so when I fell upon your work, it was really looking, I was actually, and I don't even know if I would do this. It's kind of weird because it wasn't that long ago, but I don't know if I would do this anymore. I Googled Curiosity AI and found your article. I don't even know if I would Google that now. I think I would go on ChatGPT and say like, "Hey, can you give me a list of this too?" Like, the way I search things is totally different. What? Why do you see curiosity as such a crucial aspect of how we leverage AI and how we're thinking about this? Why was that such an important aspect of how we're moving forward with this?
Yeah, because artificial intelligence and generative AI specifically has so many tentacles to it,
Yeah.
and no one is an expert. I really feel that way. I certainly feel like I'm able to write about my little corner and my little piece of one tentacle of this issue, but I think curiosity helps me to learn a little bit about the others and see how they interact. So, for instance, people raise very valid concerns about intellectual property, about the environment, about like these are not small things and not things that I scoff at by any means. I can't handle all of them or solve all of them,
Right.
but I want to know about them, and so that will inform what I do, how I speak about it with children and teenagers, so that I'm making sure that I'm able to grasp at least something about each of the tentacles of this
Yep.
this new technology. I think curiosity also helps me to understand that I'm new at this, and therefore I'm going to try some things that won't work. That's how curiosity operates,
Right.
right? You
Yep.
try some things and you're like, oh, that didn't feel right. I didn't like that at all. But it also opens the opportunity to try things that surprise you in wonderful ways.
Yeah.
And one example of that, kind of analogous to what you were just talking about, I went to write a blog post one time and I knew I had these scattered ideas as my brain tends to work, and everyone's brain works sometimes,
Right.
right? But you get these, but they're swirling, they're not connecting. So I just brain dumped it into AI and said, write this blog post for me.
Right.
And George, you're absolutely right. It was at once great in that it organized things, and it was at once terrible in that it was like no one would ever want to read it because
Right.
it wasn't human to human. There's a relationship in writing, right? It wasn't human to human words. That's why words exist. We want to connect with other humans.
Mhm.
But I think one, maybe two sentences of what it created remained in my final work. What it did do is it opened up the pathway to figure out how I wanted to write it.
Right.
So I didn't publish what it created and pass it off as my own. That would have been dishonest, and
Right.
no one would have enjoyed reading it. but I did use it to get me moving in a direction as opposed to just getting caught in the swirls in my head, which is what students will describe too sometimes.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so this just came out to my mind, and you've been teaching English, you said, for 22 years, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know about if this is like a Canadian thing. Growing up in Canadian school system, I used to, and maybe it was like in education, like being in the College of Education. Whenever I wrote like I or me, I used to get in trouble.
Mm.
And
I
now
know
it's,
what that is. Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And now it's like you're kind of saying like it actually should be you. Do you know, like I don't, and maybe I'm off here. Do
Yeah.
you know
Well,
what I mean?
you're
Where's that balance here? Because it was like, no, you have to like talk it like it was almost like no, talk about it from more a generic standpoint. And now we're saying like, well, AI can actually do the more generic thing, but where's my perspective in that? Am I like like
No, that's
what's the
absolutely my
yeah,
education. I've told kids keep some of your first person
yeah,
pronouns out of this work because what we're inclined to do as beginning writers is instead of focusing on the topic at hand with a sort of objective lens and
yeah.
an academic stance, we end up saying all about ourselves. That's how we start writing as elementary kids. And in secondary, we're often trying to sort of break students of that habit of only focusing on themselves or their opinions. And in academic writing, typically, I'm in a school. I don't know if you hear that.
No, let's go.
Okay. So typically, in an academic setting, you're expected to maintain that focus on the subject and therefore keep I out of it. And that's not a terrible thing, but you're right. AI replicates that sort of academic, distant tone really, really well. So it does give us pause to think
Yeah,
about like how do we make sure that we're not encouraging kids to strip away all of their personality from
right.
their reading because their personality and their individuality is what is going to differentiate them from AI written material.
Totally. Like it was
Yeah,
like I was just like, wait a minute.
the
I was
tone,
doing it
right?
right. I was just ahead of my time.
Yeah, yeah.
Just ahead of my time, right? I knew AI was coming. All right, this is the last question I got for you. So I'm going to give everyone the entire title of the book,
Okay.
Artful AI in Writing Instruction: A Human-Centered Approach to Using Artificial Intelligence in Grades 6 to 12. Now, somebody's going to see that title, think, and listen to this podcast and think, hey, this is only for English teachers from like middle school to high school. But I think writing is in everything. And I know you had mentioned that before. Why could any teacher, no matter your subject, why would this book actually benefit them?
Yeah, one thing I've learned is that a lot of people, even working in education, don't consider themselves strong writers.
Mhm.
And as someone who's always prided myself on that skill and developed it and loved it my whole life, I understood in many, many years of teaching that not every human feels that way. But I think only since AI has come into the picture have I understood that, like, oh, wow, lots of college graduates feel that way. Lots of people in education feel that way as well. So if I take this back to how would I help maybe someone who loves teaching, but they're teaching history and they don't love teaching
Right.
writing, I think there's examples in the book that would speak to a history teacher or a science teacher. But what I think is most important is there's principles that they can apply. Things like how can this help when a student and a teacher are sitting down with a piece of writing and trying to figure out how to best express something and they can't quite come up with the right words? How do we do it without letting AI take over the task? How do I make sure that my students aren't only brainstorming, or let me put it this way, are not subletting their brainstorming to AI as an art teacher, as a science teacher. So I think that those principles for each step of the writing process, it's the way the book's organized, are really going to be helpful because writing assignments show up in every class. And the other thing that I hope it will push teachers who are not teachers of English is to remember how much the process matters. In other subject areas, there may be a habit to only value the finished product, and AI can quickly get to a finished product that sounds pretty decent and, approximates how a human student would sound. So, what are we going to do in all the subject areas to make sure we're seeing the process happen? We're valuing the messy stuff because that's how we're going to make sure it's human. That's how we're going to make sure the learning's happening,
Right.
and that's how they'll grow as writers.
Yeah, like, I started my blog. It's like, does anyone even talk about blogging anymore? It's just like, even it's like a weird word to say. But I started, I think, in 2008 or 2009. I've been writing for 17 years. And I started it solely for the purpose of really understanding how students could leverage it, what that would look like to create a digital portfolio. And when I went through the process, I'm like, this is really an interesting way. And it's like bringing out ideas in me. And one of the things that I have really appreciated through the process is I don't write only to share my learning. It's like a portion of it I write to learn, to
Yeah.
wrestle with ideas. So you can, that's something you can apply to any class. So I know this is going to be really beneficial to, does not matter if you're an English teacher or not, and does not matter the grade you teach. As you suggested, it's really, you focusing on your own learning so you can better help kids through this process as well. So Brett, I want to say congratulations. I hope Central Bucks is really proud of you. A lot of times the districts we work in don't even notice when people write books in them. Maybe I don't even know if they know you wrote this. Maybe you just got you in trouble. Hopefully not. But
No, they're aware.
good. Okay. So everyone, you can check out Brett's book. It is available either for pre-order or order right now in the link down below. It is titled Artful AI in Writing Instruction, a Human-Centered Approach to Using Artificial Intelligence in Grades 6 to 12. Brett taking time out of his, probably didn't eat lunch today so he could record this podcast. So
You're right.
appreciate you, man. All right. Hey, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett, for your time. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.
See ya.